Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa Ramadan Mubarak. Alhamdulillah, this is day 11, segment 11, entry 11, for the Introduction to the Sacred Life project. Alhamdulillah, let me say at the outset because I definitely don't want to forget this. There are two links that I'm going to include in the description section of this particular vlog so as to make sure you go and listen to these two pieces from Imam Deen Mohammed. They were brought to my attention by Sister Zakia Nu'man in New Jersey, alhamdulillah, a sister, a pioneer, contributor to the life of Al-Islam in this country, and her late husband, Arman Nu'man, have a great repository of knowledge that's being worked on behalf of the same legacy that I'm speaking of. And of course, you're going to learn more about that as time goes on. Um, the so there's a link. This link, and I believe Bilalian Speaks is the particular one that I want you to focus on. Bilalian Speaks is the videographer, if you will, that are publishing these particular links online. And so you go to YouTube. You're already on YouTube. Go to YouTube and search for our leader Imam Muhammad, our leader Imam Muhammad, Part One. And so you're going to have Part One and Part Two. I'm going to put the links in the description section of it. I want you to look at that because it's very, very critical. I think it's one of the best descriptions of what we are seeking to do with the Sacred Life Project, and we'll elaborate as we are continuing. So, keeping with the same strategy that we've embarked upon since number 10, I'm going to read another quote from Imam Muhammad. Now, this quote is from the Elijahville lecture, Georgia. That was July 29th, Elijahville, Georgia, July 29th, 1983. Here's a quote. No man has the mind to just go by himself and take from the air his own thoughts, or take from before him his own thought, and establish a community or establish a society that will stand and continue in the future. No man has that kind of ability. Every society has been established, every society that has been established and that has lasted on this earth was started by people who had the vision or the insight to see what Allah intends, what the Creator intends for human society. And then they put that in their language, whether it was French or European or African or whatever they were. They put that in their language and then they presented it to their people. And that's how they brought up their people into established society. They got insight into what Allah, the Creator, intends. End of quote. Now, it's 1983, right? So, what is that? That's 27 years ago. Okay. And how many of us hearing that when he said it really understood it? I for one said no, I didn't get the focus that we have now, and maybe as simple and as logical and as expected as one might say of that, there's just a clarity to it now that is very, very important. And that's really what the Sacred Life Project is about. It's about bringing out that clarity that's lost upon many of us that Imam Muhammad has provided for us. And I'm fiddling with my timer here, so I won't mess up. You know, as I always tell you, it's always a one take scene. So I got to take a look, take a couple of seconds away. It's all live. We're not trying to sell this to Warner Brothers or anything like that. So we're good. So so the idea is to come to understand Imam Muhammad's language and how it is to be incorporated, how it is to be materialized. You'll hear this language in the video clip that I'm pointing you to. How it is to be actualized, how it is to be materialized, and it all is generated around, again, language. And what the Imam starts out in this quote here, saying the person who is the leader and the person who establishes a society, they don't just pull it out of the air or some other aspect of the anatomy, as some people may say. The thought, the you don't pull it out of their own thoughts. They actually go to what God has established, and they seek to understand in what God has established the way by which they should establish society. And when Allah blesses them and guides them to the understanding of the manner in which that society is to be established and the grounds upon which that society is to be established, then those leaders, those men who are looking out for their people and the establishment of their people, and we're talking about human life, but every ethnic group does this. This is what he said in the quote. He said, whether it's French or whether it's African, whoever, they go to their people first to establish that. And they don't derive it just from themselves. They derive it by having a comprehension of what God intends. They derive it by understanding the nature of the human being, and the nature, therefore, of the society that should be established that accommodates that particular human nature, all of its needs and all of its potentialities. When that's understood, then they put it in the language of their people. So the French did it for the French, the Africans did it for the Africans, the Europeans did it for the Europeans, etc. Okay, well, every other group, and especially a group that has been dehumanized, a group that has been broken down totally as human beings, well, they need someone to do the same thing for them. And we say Imam Muhammad absolutely, positively has done that for us. Now we're in a place now where we have to understand what I've come to call the Imam's social grammar. That is, there are people who know the words that Imam Muhammad uses. So that means they have an Imam Muhammad vocabulary. You listen to them, vocabulary. And it's not to criticize anyone. It's just to critique, just as a group, those that identify with the leadership and the language and the legacy of Imam Muhammad. We have to get beyond vocabulary, right? But we have to get the vocabulary first. I mean, first you have to get the vocabulary, and then after you get the vocabulary, then you understand the grammar that's really behind that vocabulary. Now, I'm not just talking about, or I'm not necessarily even talking about, the tongue. I'm talking about the thought. Okay, so in terms of understanding the grammar of Imam Muhammad's language, the vocabulary, understanding his language, you can't understand his language until you understand the grammar of it. So you have to understand the right relationship between the various concepts for which we have words. So when we have interests, when we have business, when we have language, when we have education, when we have excellence, when we have righteousness, when we have human dignity, all these phrasings that are a part of the vocabulary of Imam Muhammad. Now you got to understand, okay, in what order, how should they be related and equated in order to make sense? Not only make sense in terms of communicating from one person to the other, but how does it make sense in terms of application, realization, materialization of what those concepts, that vocabulary actually represents? How do we fulfill the vision using that language? The vision is not just the vocabulary. So you have to move from the vocabulary into the language. And I want to parenthetically say, what do we mean by language? The way to understand it, in this case, in this instance, in this presentation, is to understand it, the social grammar of Imam Muhammad's vocabulary. Meaning that, what's the proper order for things to make sense? What's the proper order in order to establish our ummah, establish our society? What's the proper order in which things should be done? What's the proper order? What's the level of importance and regard we're supposed to put to one thing as compared to the other? And how do we grasp that from what Imam Muhammad has communicated to us over the years inside the teaching that he's given us? Well, when we understand that, then we understand the vision. And once we understand the vision, now we can go to work to establish that vision. Now, at that same Elijahville presentation, the Jum'ah, the Imam said that there are 4 tenses. There's past tense, present tense, future tense, and controlled tense. And controlled tense, he explained, was that having a vision on the future and acting in the present to realize that vision in the future. Well, then you're in controlled tense. But first you got to get the vision straight. Well, how do you get the vision straight? You get the vision straight when you get the language straight. Well, what is the language? Understanding the social grammar of the vocabulary. And what's the vocabulary? The words that Imam Muhammad used. Okay, now we got to understand how he used those words and the proper way to, let's call it now, the social syntax of what Imam Muhammad is doing. So, what's the relationship between business and education and politics and culture, etc.? What are their relations and what are their order of significance, and how do we make those happen? Well, that's what we'll continue to talk about. That's what the Sacred Life Project is about, putting everyone in a position where they can fluently understand, communicate, apply the language of Imam Muhammad to materialize that society. Inshallah, we'll say more next time. God's peace be on you. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.